What is up, you barbell bandits? It is the one, the only Gunslinger here to bring order to the land of gains. Because today we'll be talking about the third day in my program, the Gunslinger, an arm day that will make you a demigod, as the protocol implies. But not only that, it emphasizes something that a lot of natties are lacking: gigantic shoulders, biceps, and triceps. And this is more than just an arm day. It really is an upper body day minus your chest, but the emphasis and the exercise choice heavily favors your arms for that immaculate growth so you can bust through your t-shirts. But before we get into that, please subscribe, and I'm not even going to ask you to like. I actually prefer if you guys comment. I like to interact with you guys. Any questions you have, I'll freaking answer. I'm just trying to provide good advice here, and if I can help you out, all the better for the land of gains. But the name of this day comes from the series The Dark Tower by Stephen King, where there is the Gunslinger. He is the baddest man in the land. Roland Deschain carries two of the biggest guns that any of the worlds have ever seen, not so unlike myself, who, I do say so, may have the juiciest side bicep of any natty out there. You know, anybody can challenge me, but I think right now at this bulk, sitting at 217 as of this morning, I beat anybody in a 1-to-1 on the side bicep pose. But let's jump into it with our first superset, which is machine shoulder press and machine pullovers. And you're going, hold up, wait a minute. This is an arm day, biceps, triceps. Why are we starting with a press and a pull for the first thing? Well, that's because you gotta do what you gotta do to make a holistically juicy physique, and that comes through setting yourself up for success. For example, I like starting with a press because it warms me up for everything else in my day. I don't really want to jump straight into a bicep curl or a tricep press down because my joints aren't really warm yet. And so doing a proper warm up, ramping up through my weight, and then doing a multi-joint exercise where it's not all the stress on just one allows me to get the blood pumping and still maximize my gains by getting a little bit of everything working to start off with. Yes, it's a front delt emphasis, but my triceps and upper chest are also working. The overhead press is something that I neglected for years before fully implementing it into my program about a year and a half ago. And yes, it makes an absolutely huge difference. Don't be the person that says, well, I get my front delt work from incline dumbbell pressing. That is absolute beta shit. Because what defines that upper musculature, the definition between your chest and your shoulders and all the good stuff that happens up there, is getting enormous front delts. And it also helps with your shoulder health overall. The mistake I made for years was not doing this, and I will never make that again. There's a bunch of different variations that I've ran: overhead barbell press, dumbbell press, but most recently, because my gym has this machine, which is right next to the lat pullover machine, I've been spamming it. And I want to talk about the progression scheme that I'm using here. Despite having a ton of different progression schemes in the Demigod Protocol, I'm using the simplest one, a double progression, trying to hit 3 sets of 12. And why I've chosen this is because for a couple months, I was stalled out at 210 pounds. And for months, I was smashing into that wall, not able to get 12, 12, 12. But then finally, I broke through. And guess when that was? 3 weeks ago, and I've hit a PR every week since. I want you guys to take the lesson in that progression is not linear, and sometimes you just need to be grinding away, pushing stimulus week after week, and trusting the process. My weight didn't really go up during that period, but then my body found its groove with the work that I've been doing, both in the gym and for my actual work, and the progress has exploded, coinciding with my weight going up, and also Operation Chocolate Milk. So there's a couple lessons you can take away there. First, don't lose faith if you're providing excellent stimulus and recovering for your other workouts. And second, get your goddamn bulk on. I don't care what the scientific studies say. I actually think I got 13 reps on my second and third set. I just couldn't help myself, and the progress is moving. I'm really excited to see how many weeks I can go forward by adding 5 pounds, and those 2.5 pound plates, they make a difference and they make huge gains week after week. As for my second choice, the lat pullover, something you'll never see in most people's programs anywhere close to the top, let alone at all, is a new addition to the top since moving to this gym. At first I had it as my second to last superset, but I moved it up here because, one, the convenience of exercise, which is a great way of experimenting with your program and learning new stuff, but also because I'm doing it 2 other times during the week, and both of those are in the middle and end of the session. I want to prioritize both a vertical pull, a row, and a pullover, the 3 holy grail exercises of back, at the first position. So some of the cues that have helped me get the most out of the pullover are a big chest, pulling through your elbows and angling them inwards, and then making sure your shoulder joint remains locked when you're going into the stretch position to allow your lats to pull as much as possible. And you can also, if you have the option with a dumbbell pullover or a bar pullover, or even this if you drop the seat down, to shift your hips down as far as possible to stretch that lat from both positions. And the difference between progression schemes that you'll see me doing here is that I am just going to failure as many reps as possible. Despite this being a main mover for my back as of this day, I don't really give a shit about the rep range. I'm just going as hard as possible and then moving up in weight when it feels adequate. The rep range is kind of relative, which is a video that I'm going to make in the future of your rep range doesn't really matter, at least for everything. There's nuance to this, and when you're advanced, structure becomes more limiting but still important, whereas when you're a beginner or intermediate, structure provides you the absolute best road to gains because it is a learning platform for everything else. That's like I said, when you program, hey, try switching things up because you learn from that experience. Now, the second superset that we have is easy bar preacher curls and lateral raises on the machine while strapped in. Easy bar preacher curls are the go-to for me when it comes to stretch-based bicep exercises. They are so stable, they're highly loadable, and they're not dangerous at all if you're not a fucking dumbass. For example, here I'm doing, I don't know, well over 100 pounds. I think the bar weighs 25. Don't think it's 35, but who really cares? It's all relative as long as you're using the same weights each week. And I crushed a new PR. This is my first week of hitting 12, 12, 12 or plus on some of the sets with this weight. I'm at a 2.5 next week, and that is hype as hell. As I talked about in my Dragon Reborn day, the preacher curl is one of the exercises I'm specializing in this bulk. First time I've done an exercise 3 times a week. Today I'm doing the medium grip, whereas on Monday I do the close grip, and on Friday I do a machine preacher curl. And it has worked phenomenally well. Specializing in an exercise has allowed me to just get more reps and more practice in it, and as I get stronger and better at the movement, I obviously grow muscle and get that goddamn juicy side bicep pose. I think that this is something that people can definitely learn from, but I'm still a huge fan of variety in programming. A huge technique change for the preacher curl for me has been moving the seat all the way up so it's just my elbows attached to the pad. I felt really limited and awkward when I had my shoulders slotted in, and I didn't feel like my biceps got as much stretch or work. This has been a huge difference, and it also allows me to do partial reps afterwards, which I've always been kind of trying to find the way to incorporate partials into my bicep training because my triceps have outgrown my biceps because of those partial reps that I've been doing at the end of my extension sets or my overhead extension sets. And so finding a way to simulate that with biceps is something that I've been desperately trying to do, and you can see in my Until Death dynamic double progression, which I cover in the Demigod Protocol. If you're watching this and you haven't seen that, watch that next or listen to it. It's kind of an hour and 15 minutes long, but that is a goldmine of information if I do pat myself on the back. Now, the exercise paired with this is the machine lateral raise while strapped in, and this made a huge difference. I really didn't like this machine because either I had to go parallel, going above my head was really awkward, but once you introduce the straps, not only do you not have to worry about grip, but also you can rip it with some fucking aggression. And that's something I wish I could see in the gym more often from other people lifting, is you can be controlled, but extremely aggressive in your lifting. And that aggression kind of just helps set the tone for the workout. And it's just as effective with muscle growth if you're controlling your eccentric, at least slightly. And exercises like this, where you really don't have a chance of injuring yourself if you're all warmed up properly, are super fun to just attack, because you have that slow reduction in range of motion as you become weaker and weaker, and going mentally, no, I'm going to power through this and fight back, and being able to just rip some new energy into the reps is really invigorating for your workout. Yes, it does take a good amount out of you, but at the end of the day, are you really gonna give a shit if you have enormous boulder shoulders and you feel like a goddamn Super Saiyan? Now, using straps in training is something that I haven't really done before the past year or so, and I do kind of think that was okay of developing the grip strength and being able to feel the exercises without being locked in. I think it takes an element out of the exercise that I don't think necessarily beginners should be lacking. I don't know how to exactly articulate my thoughts on this, but straps have a time and place and shouldn't be spammed for everything when it comes to your exercises for back or shoulders and all that. Like, you shouldn't be strapping in for your dumbbell lateral raise. Just grab that shit and fucking rip it like a man. But something like this, hey, you know what? If it makes the exercise better, more effective, go for it. But there's some soul in just raw dogging the grip. So for the reason of why I go all the way overhead on these is kind of twofold. One, I like the feeling of it. Two, I'm not great at programming straight up upper back work. I get it as a lot of ancillary work with my other movements. And so anytime I can get a little bit of that, I'm gonna take it. I got big traps, but I don't know, man. For some reason, I just have an addiction to getting wider and thicker lats. And so my upper back has been kind of left alone because it's developed well enough and I've got good genetics for it. But at some time and place, I'm going to have to put some upper back emphasis to get real thick and nasty, which I think would go in one of my next exercise slots. And those are my tricep long rope extension and my wide grip pull-up, super wide grip, which would probably be the one I'd replace with some upper back type of row. Now, these tricep extensions are the second exercise that I am specializing in. On Monday and Friday, I do it with a short rope. On today, I use the long rope, just for some variety's sake within specialization. I'm an addiction to doing a whole lot of shit because I'm paranoid that I'm going to leave some gains on the table if I don't do a little bit of everything in some capacity. I know that is logically fallible, but in my head, it works pretty well. Now, the tricep extension form I see get wrong all the time. There's no lean, there's no sway, there's no body English. Your triceps are a strong muscle, but if you're standing straight up and down, you just cannot apply force in the best way possible. So kick that ass back, lean a little bit forward, and keep the rope close to your face and extend behind your body, while at the top allowing your elbow angle to travel as close to the shoulder as possible. It's not quite as apparent on these ones as it is with the short rope because I do have that extra distance, but allowing that stretch at the top initiates a lot more tricep growth because you get a little bit more burn, and then at the contraction, it's a little bit more intense. And the overall combination of that plus the partial reps at the ends leads to some gigantic horseshoes. Now, you see me doing these kind of weird pullover partials. It's something that I've been experimenting with. You'll see on the second set, I actually correct my elbow angle to be tighter so that the stretch is greater across the shoulder joint. But I don't like it quite as much as the short rope because I'd have to essentially be kneeling to get the same amount of stretch at that angle. I've said stretch a lot when it comes to these, but it's far from the most important thing because the regulation of your control and your ability to handle the weight will be, can you hit that contraction for a decent amount of reps and continue through those slightly less range of motion reps. I really believe that the stretch position of the muscle is mostly more beneficial because you can sit in it for longer compared to the contracted position. If you can hit that mid-range of motion where tension is the greatest on your tricep over and over again, I would be there all day, every day. There's something to resistance profiles of you want to be in that hardest position as much as possible, and everything above or below it is kind of just checking the box there. I do a lot of full range of motion stuff simply because I like the way it makes my joints feel. Despite being a big man, I'm pretty flexible and I don't really have any injuries simply because I can move and groove. That's ironic because on Hail Reaper I was talking how I pulled my fucking groin riding a bucking bull, but for the most part, for working a manual labor job and dogging it in the gym, my joints stand up pretty damn well. But back to the stretch. I think that the stretch should be prioritized in a few movements, definitely not all of the movements, but most importantly, it should not be prioritized over adding more weight or more stress to the primary part of the movement that is the hardest. For example, on like a dumbbell press, that point like right above your chest where you always get stuck in grinding, if you're dropping the weight to then get it really below your chest into the super stretch, you're fumbling the bag of gains because it's then a lot easier to press through that midpoint and you're really just avoiding the hardest point of the lift. So throw a couple more pounds on that, keep the control, and maybe try to focus on that highest tension point of the lift, moreover than the most stretch position. That is to say, you should get into that stretch position in different variations. I usually like to program it later in the workout when my strength is down more. So it's more about mind muscle connection, control, and getting a fat pump because the walls have already been broken down for muscle gain. And I just got to sweep up the sweet hypertrophy gold that's left there to take. Now, the second exercise in the superset, and trust me, the only other back exercise on this arm day, is super wide grip pull-ups. I used to have these as my first exercise in my second superset when I had pullovers farther down the workout, so performance is down a bit from that, along with being a thick boy right now, but I was really suffering with the performance of these as I moved it down my workout until I introduced the straps. Like I said, there's a time and a place for these, and also trying new things on your exercise before completely abandoning it for something like lat pull downs is always a good idea. See if you can make something work instead of just throwing it away, because that's a learning opportunity. Maybe you find something completely new that you really like. For example, me doing these pull-ups with some straps on the super wide grip versus just screw it, I'm going to go back to a tried and true classic, or I'm going to try something new again, and then you don't learn anything. The best you can do is do your best to make it succeed. As for the wide grip pull-ups as an exercise, I was so hesitant to take these out because I've made huge back gains in the past year doing pull-ups 2 to 3 times a week, so I really didn't want to abandon it as my second pull-up, so I made it work here, and it is great for your teres major, minor, and that overall lat width. It is a pretty unique movement, and for a lot of people, you're probably going to have to use the assisted pull-up, but the connection you get to your lats is immaculate. The top range of motion is less, but you do get to kind of sit in that midpoint and stretch position for a good amount of reps as you hit those partials. Now the next superset is some innovation, baby. We got the behind the neck lat pull down curl, and then we have the rear delt fly on the Pec Deck. I tried these the Mike Mentzer way up front, and it felt pretty good. Then I said, fuck it. My elbows keep on wanting to drive forward and my hands backwards. I'm just gonna try behind the head. And I got the most immaculate skin-splitting pump doing these. But some people are going to say, that's a short and biased exercise. Well, fuck you. I get a big pump, and also there's plenty of length and partials to hit here. Have you ever seen the biceps look like that or be put in that angle? There's opportunity and room for growth anywhere that you have not put time-tested effort into. So that's what I'm doing right here. Who the hell has ever curled behind their head seriously? Probably gymnasts, and they've got gigantic biceps. So why would we not also do the same thing? Elbows in front, elbows in back. What about elbows above? Now, I'm still really figuring out the form on these, but I found driving my elbows forward and kind of getting the bar to the back of my skull has felt really nice because it's pulling my bicep across the shoulder joint. It just feels really good, and you get so much blood flow in your elbows, especially with me doing preacher curls 3 times a week. Doing these short and biased exercises to get my elbows and joints healthy, doesn't make them healthy, but it provides more stimulus that isn't all stretch based, which is really, really shitty on your joints if you're somebody who just only does that stuff. And as for the superset with the reverse Pec Deck fly, this is a top tier upper back and rear delt builder. This is my go-to recommendation for people starting out training rear delts because it is the easiest to find your connection on. Dumbbells, people usually get their traps involved, but here if I tell you to keep your shoulders forward and just pull through your elbows while pushing down on the handles, you're going to feel your rear delts, and you can smash partials in oblivion where they're in that stretch position and they're pretty much the only thing working, and it really establishes a platform to jump into more advanced rear delt exercises where you have to keep your shoulder blades down to target them well. It's a tried and true classic, and Dr. Mike Israetel gave the funniest but also best tip for how to do these of just imagine you're in Scrooge McDuck's money pool and every single gold doubloon that you sweep up you get to keep. So reach as far forward and then go to the sides. I actually kind of like dropping my elbows just a bit. I feel like it engages my rear delt a little bit better than being fully lateral and parallel. Now for our final superset, we have my golden tier tricep builder, the overhead cable extension, and then we have one arm dumbbell hammer preacher curls, which are also Jeff Nipper's apparently S tier bicep builder. Hey motherfucker, stop copying my training. I'm joking, but really Jeff, stop watching me train. Anyways, these blew up my triceps over the past 4 years since I implemented them. I usually have done them with the rope overall, just the short rope attachment, but this gym has these cable handles, and I don't think I like the feeling as much, but it allows me to drive more weight. So it's a stimulus that I haven't used quite as much before, because usually the ropes, your hands slip, kind of hurts a little bit. You kind of have to maybe take a break if you get your grip slightly wrong, but these you can just keep on ripping with heavier weight. And the long head potential on this is amazing, because not only can you pull down to begin with, but as you get more tired, you can turn it into more of a push to get your short head and your medial head involved. So if you don't know, with your tricep extensions, especially when you're doing overhead, the more you kind of do a little pulling motion, the more your long head's going to be used. And as you switch it more into a push, your other two heads will be utilized. And then that, combined with the partial reps that you can get, creates a beautiful mechanical drop set for your triceps. I also find this is one of the overhead extension exercises that you can do before a press down, because it doesn't irritate your elbows at all or as much. I usually kind of at least like to do a press on it, whether it's your bench press or your overhead press. But jumping straight into it as my first tricep exercise has been something that I've done in the past. You really want to let your hands get pulled all the way back and your elbow angle be increased to the maximum before you start having your shoulders move backwards. Think of it as a partial pullover and letting your triceps, specifically the long head, receive this massive stretch. A key that I see people miss out is that elbow angle. They'll go about halfway up from their bottom position and then allow it to stretch. And I don't feel it's nearly as effective as first letting your triceps get into the fully stretched position, then pulling across the shoulder joint. As for the single arm dumbbell hammer preacher curls, well, these are just the perfect finisher for this day. I actually had them on my Dragon Reborn day, but we did some schmaggling and put a bilateral exercise in there. Currently in my program, this is the only hammer curl which I do, which I may be changing in the future because I really do like the hammer curl variation, and it adds that thick, nasty look to your arms. These, as I said, are a finisher exercise. You don't really want to go too heavy on them because doing them right is a lot harder than you think it is. For me, at least, when I face straight on, especially with my left arm, my dominant arm, my arm wants to rotate inwards and use more of my bicep than the brachialis at that point. So keeping that bicep lined up vertically and really in that hammer position is more difficult than you think. You automatically want your shoulder to internally rotate, and you have to stop that. And I found that sitting sideways helps. Now, as I preached in the Demigod Protocol, having these unilateral exercises in your program is essential for developing both sides of your body and establishing that good mind-muscle connection with usually your weaker muscle group. For years, my left lat and my right bicep have never felt quite as good as my right lat and my left bicep when doing the exercises. And doing my due diligence of these one-arm unilateral exercises has helped me connect with them on the bilateral movements, which allows them to do more work and grow more holistically with the rest of my body. I'm personally somebody who wants to correct my imbalances as much as possible throughout my time lifting, but I'm also happy accepting my body for the quirks that it has. It really is just the unique challenge that we each have in our lifting journeys, is figuring out our own obstacles. And that problem solving right there, I hope I can help you with. But at the end of the day, as I always emphasize, you are the one who has to make it work, and you have to do that by learning and innovating. So by doing that, you should ask me some questions in the comments. So now that you've seen the Gunslinger, let's talk about the importance of the arm day and the emphasis in this programming itself. So I call this day the rest day that's not a rest day because of my exercise selection. My upper body days are brutal. My leg days hurt like hell. But when it comes to this day, I can summon myself to go to the gym because these are low impact exercises. Despite the intensity, despite the aggression, my recovery from these is great, especially with a rest day after this on Thursday. So being able to learn the nuances of programming, of the effect on your nervous system and your muscular system and your joints is super important. And you can only do that by one, learning from people like me, but also two, trying it yourself. Because for me, I recover really well from deep joint exercises. I feel great, but I know other people that feel cranky as hell if they're doing super dips and everything with a lot of range of motion. So that's a unique problem that you have to figure out the answer to yourself. But something I can recommend for everybody is finding those lower fatigue exercises and implementing them where you can to scoop up those extra gains and really round out your physique on the yearly bulk. Too many people look at it in such a short term. Like the program I'm running for 8 weeks, how many gains did I make this month or the next month, you got to look at it at least in a singular bulk and cut cycle. You got to trust the process, innovate and course correct, but you need to pick a path and stick to it to see the results and learn better for the next bulk. And that's what I did with this arm day. I'd never had an arm day. I'd switched up my complete split, but it was a resounding success, but it took a lot of trial and error to find the right formula. And even after I did that, when I came to a new gym, I swapped my pullovers earlier and added an extra bicep exercise to try something new. And yeah, it works. I did make some other adjustments in my other days, but that is what the gym is. It is growth, not only in your body, but also in your mind. So find the joy in the programming. Find the joy in figuring out how you uniquely react to the environment that is the Iron Temple. Anyways, well, that's a sneak peek talk at the next video. Hopefully next video. Been trying to record it. I have it written out. I already know it's going to take a little while to edit. But that's a little teaser that you guys can look forward to. Or you might see the Excalibur day because I'm freaking putting off recording that video yet again. Hopefully not. Hopefully you see that the week after this comes out. Please, I want to get it done. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching to this point. If anybody has ever made it to this point, please comment down below. You deserve a shout out and an applause because this was a long, lengthy, nuanced video. And I'm going to get out of your head and out of your ears. You're probably listening to this on AirPods. I'm rambling. Anyways, peace. I'm out. Subscribe. Bye.